ever eat an organ meat. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is the fact that you got to understand that, recognize it, so that we can actually eat it in moderation. Anchovies, herring, which is a type of fish, obviously, and mushrooms. They have a lot of the purines. An excessive consumption of alcohol will actually also precipitate gout. Okay? So you have to be able to be drinking alcohol very, very moderately. Right? And people say, well, I only had 340 ounces, a day. Well, that's a bit much, right? So having a glass of wine is one thing, but drinking a fifth of Hennessy is completely different, right? So we got to do this in moderation. Certain medications that are what we call diuretics, those are fluid pills. The doctor may put you on that because of high blood pressure. That can also cause a precipitation of gout. So that's another reason why a person can have a gout flare. And then if you have a family history of it, or if you're a man who's over the age of about 40 or 50, you have a higher risk of having gout. Any questions about this? Yes.
Actually, what we know is that organ meats are not high, they don't have high cholesterol.
Okay, so when we're talking about...
That's why we resort to eating organ meat instead of red meat, because people say that red organ meats are better because they don't have high cholesterol. So that's why we eat organ meats in place of red meat. But now that organ meat even cause gout.
Okay. So let me just say this to you. You can just say, well, I ate this because I didn't want to get that. But too much of anything is not going to be good. Does that make sense? So you've got to be eating this in moderation. So you cannot have organ meats every day, right? And you should not have red meat every day. We have to modify our diets and what we eat, right? We have to think about it, right? Okay, so let me just give you a question. When someone asks you, what are you having for dinner? What is your response? What's the first thing you name when you're having something for dinner? What would you say? What did you have for dinner today?
Rice and stew.
Okay.
Rice and stew.
Right. Okay. What tends to happen is the fact that we think about the meat that we're having as a priority. That's what we're thinking about, right? I'm having chicken. I'm having beef. I'm having goat, or whatever. We're thinking about that, right? Fish. We're thinking about the meat, right? The other stuff we like, but it kind of comes along with that, right? And we have to kind of come out of that mode of just thinking about that meat and how much we eat. The men get the lion's share of the meat. So we're eating a goodly amount of that, and that's what happens, right? Our mothers and our wives, and what are they doing? They're feeding us, right? Because we're the men. But many times, it's too much. It's in excess. Does that make sense? Yes. Right? So I'm not saying that you can't eat it, but you got to cut it down. Yes, sir.
You see, the problem there now is when you mention dinner, let's be frank. We people that come from Africa, at dinner time, we eat a lot of meat with eba, fufu, they don't know it as swallow. Have you heard of fufu before? Fufu, eba, all those big things we eat with soup, with assorted meat.
A lot of fat.
So most of the time, that's what we consume in the afternoon and at night, dinner time. You understand? So, as this thing causes gout now, in fact, I don't know.
So, but you're no different, believe it or not, than most Americans. We all do the same thing. We're all eating a lot of meat. We change our vegetable to meat. If you're eating collard greens, people will put in a smoked meat to flavor the vegetable. Well, you just changed the vegetable to a meat. Does that make sense? We'll eat a rice and we'll put a meat in it. We'll put high caloric stuff in what we eat. The fact that we can put peanut butter with chicken, that's a whole lot of fat. I mean, it's delicious, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot. And so we've got to understand even the stews and the soups that you eat, very, very high calories, very, very high fat. That's why it tastes so good. But the point is that we're going to have to cut back on some of that, on the amount of what we're eating. Because once you start having gout and that pain hits you, that ain't no joke. It debilitates you. You can't even walk because it's so hard. It's so horrible. You can't grab stuff because it's in those joints. So you got to be very, very mindful of that. Okay, so we could be healthy at this point now, but as you get a little older, it can hurt you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. But that's excellent questions. Next slide. Okay, so we'll talk about how we diagnose it. We diagnose it just by the symptoms, right? Very easily, you come in, your big toe is red, it's swollen, it's painful. I can probably say you most likely got gout, right? What I didn't do is I stick a needle in it and pull out some fluid out of that toe or that joint, and I can look under the microscope and see the urate crystals. I've diagnosed you with gout, okay? And then also we can get a blood test, and blood tests will show a high uric acid level, and so then I can say most likely you do have gout. That's the way we diagnose it, okay? But I just want you to understand this is one of those things that men get much more than women. This is one of those things that can debilitate you. But this is one of the things that we can prevent. We can definitely prevent it, right? We don't have to eat the diet that we eat in so much of that, and we don't have to have the alcohol, okay? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so treatment, I can give you some pain medications, anti-inflammatory medications that we would give you. I want people to understand something. Just because I'm giving you a medication and it's treating the pain and it treated that particular episode does not mean that you should not follow the cutting it down in your diet and stuff like that. I think one of the things that we do here in this country is we tend to say, if you just give me the medication, I can still do what I do. That doesn't work, right? People say, I got allergies and all that kind of stuff outside, and then they just give me that little squirt thing. I go, now I can be out in the park. No, right? That was to calm down that asthma or whatever it happened to be, but you still shouldn't be there. It's like a person who has indigestion. Spicy food gives me indigestion, people will say. So I got to take a Zantac. Right? I got to take some type of antacid, right? You've seen people do that, right? So what they do, they take the antacid, and then what do? Start eating the spicy food again. Well, you're not helping yourself. Does that make sense? Right? So in actuality, if you have the disease, you got to cut out what's causing it. Just because I give you a medication to calm the disease down does not mean that you should continue on doing what you've been doing, because it's just going to get just as bad. Okay? So, lifestyle changes, drink 2 to 4 liters of fluid a day. I'm telling you, the fluid I'm talking about is water. It's water. And most people will say, I don't want to drink that water because I want to drink juice, I want to drink soda, I want to drink other things, right? No, you got to drink water, that's what it is. And please, no misconceptions. Diet soda is not better for you. Diet soda just makes you crave more to eat, right? Drink water. If you really think, I don't really like the taste of water, put a little lemon in it. Put a little lime in it. That's okay, right? But don't put lemon, lime, and sugar. Right? I'm going to have lemonade, right? That sugar's a beast, right? So you want to but you want to be able to drink that will help you in a lot of different diseases, but especially in gout. Limit the alcohol intake. Eat moderate amounts of protein. So watch the intake that you have of the amount of meat that you're having each day and the numbers of times per day. You got to watch that. I'm not going to sit here and say to you, eat only this. I don't do that as a physician. But I think I go through what I call harm reduction. Eat less of it that you're doing now. The older you get, the less of that meat and that high fat content stuff that you can eat. Just eat less of it, and it's okay. Moderate amounts of protein, and just limit that intake of the fish, poultry, just limit it. And I will tell you, some fishes are fine. Rather than frying it, right, to give it more calories, you may be better off than just baking it, right? The types of fish that you eat, right? Salted fish may taste really good, but what's the problem with salted fish? Salted. That's what happens. The salted is what's going to cause the hypertension and blah, 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 right? It's the salted part of it. I know it's delicious. Don't get me wrong. I like to eat it too, right? But you got to cut it or down, right? I'm not saying take it out of your diet completely, but just cut it down. Am I making sense? Anybody have any questions? We good? Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. So prevention, fluid, preferably water, limit, avoid alcohol intake, eat a balanced diet with fruits and vegetables. And that's another thing. The fruits and vegetables are great. Fruits and vegetables are great. However, you can't change the fruit and vegetable. What I mean by that, you can't add meat to the vegetable. Right? If you add on that meat, all you did was you just had another meat. Right? Say, oh, I'm gonna have a little bit of cantaloupe, or I'm gonna have a little bit of watermelon, or I'm gonna have a little bit of grapefruit, and then now you got to sprinkle sugar on it. Well, you've now just added more calories to that. That's causing you to have more problems, rather than just eating the fruit by itself, right? So adding stuff to it, adding salt, adding sugar to your fruit is not the best thing for you. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so anybody got any questions about gout? Yes. Go ahead.
Most of our people, what they eat is after eating, they like taking soda, juice. Like hardly you see a woman or somebody eating rice without, drinking soda or juice or fruit juice, whatever. So that is the practice with our people, even me.
So what I'm hearing you say is the fact that that's what we do. That's what I'm hearing, right? I'm hearing you say that's what we do. That's how we eat. The issue with that is the fact that this stuff is not as healthy for us, and we don't work like we used to do 3 and 4 generations ago. We don't do that. We sit at a desk, but we still want to eat like a lumberjack. But that doesn't really actually work. I'll give you an example. I can tell you this right now. I used to tell people all the time, diabetes runs in my family. And I would always say that. I said, diabetes runs in my family. But what I've come to realize, diabetes runs in my family because nobody in my family runs. Think about that, right? If you have a sedentary family and you're eating all this stuff, right, you can get diabetes. It's a family trait, but we've got to get out there and do some more exercising. We have to do that because the strength of a nation is seen in and measured by the strength and the health of its men. We are the leaders in our families. So we have got to take the lead on making sure that the family is healthy, that we're there to take care of that family. Yes, sir. Put your mic up, put your mic up.
Adding sugar to our diet, like drinking soda, drinking juice, is not good. What we are saying is that if we want to drink soda, we drink soda separately from, I know that if you are taking dinner or taking a meal, we eat the meal without drinking all those things.
Right. Not the soda.
Soda
Right.
or fruit juice.
Right.
Now, but if we want to take soda, we might not cut it out completely, but maybe once in a while. If you want to drink it, we drink it separately, not adding it to our diet. Is that what you are saying, sir?
I am saying something like that, but let me just explain to you how it works out. No. Let me explain it right here. Let me help you out. If you notice, if you go to a restaurant when they have orange juice, many a times they'll give you a small glass of orange juice. It's a small glass. Now we tend to say, well, I want a bigger glass of that, and I'm drinking that orange juice while I'm eating. What I'm going to say to you is this. I'm doing what I'm calling harm reduction. Drink water while you're eating. And then if you choose to have 8 ounces, I said 8 ounces, I didn't say 32 ounces, 8 ounces of a juice or of soda, you can have that at the end of your meal to give you what you were looking for because you were craving that, but not a whole lot. When I grew up, we had a 16-ounce bottle of, well, for me it was Pepsi. 16 ounces. And as a kid, I had to share it with my 4 brothers and sisters. So 4 of us had to share 16 ounces of soda. Now, Wawa and Royal Farms, they literally have buy one, get one free, and it's 64 ounces of a slushie. And parents literally give a 3-year-old a whole 64 by themselves. And they got 4 kids, and all of them can't even hold it, and they're slurping on that. That's too much, right? We shared 16 ounces as a kid. These children are drinking 32 and 64 ounces by themselves. And now we wonder why we have obesity. Now we wonder why we have diabetes. So what I'm saying is, as the leaders, what we have to do is we have to think to ourselves, you know what? We shouldn't be doing that. Let's make sure that our children are drinking the water, right? And not sweet tea, right? Southern sweet tea in America is so sweet that I think it's thicker. It got so much sugar in it. It has, anybody who's in science here? Any science people? Okay, it changes the viscosity of the water, right? That's how much sugar, it's like syrup. It's so sweet. You know, and then when we go to certain stores, they say we have sweet tea and we have extra sweet tea. It's just more calories unnecessarily. And what I'm saying at this point now is cut that back. I'm telling you it works. I'm telling you, I can stand before you and tell you it works. You know how I can tell you it works? Because y'all looking at all the pictures up there of me, I was 100 pounds more. I was 100 pounds heavier. And just by cutting out that stuff, I'm 100 pounds less. Now, I'm still no small guy, right? I get it. And I don't deprave myself of eating things. I just don't eat as much, right? Because I could sit down and eat so much that I could put myself to sleep. No, you get tired, right? And you burp and you sit back and boom, in 5 minutes I'm out, right? I don't eat like that anymore because you have to cut it out because I'm no longer 40 years old. I'm no longer 50 years old, right? So I'm 60. So I can't do what I used to do when I was 20, right? You have to modify that diet. Okay, next slide, heart disease and hypertension. Heart disease and hypertension. So about 800,000 Americans have died of their first coronary attack, and I can tell you this right now, even if you're from Africa and from other places and all that kind of stuff, you have a less of a chance of dying of heart disease than many Americans. But guess what? When you've been here for about 10 or 20 years, you catch up. Right, you catch right up, right? Because you live the way we live and you're eating what we're eating, right? So you just catch up. So basically, that's you too, okay? It's the leading cause of death in Maryland, but it's the leading cause of death in America. It's the leading cause of death around the world, okay? More than half of the death in heart disease are in men, right? That's what happens. It's less of us, but more than half are in us. Let's go to the next slide. So, I guess I could kind of look at this and say that when we talk about the statistics of heart disease, you can see that black people have a higher risk of heart disease than white people. That's what I just want to show you on that right there, right? It's higher, right? It's higher than Hispanics, it's higher than Asian Pacific Islander, it's just higher in us. That hypertension is a silent killer, so we've got to be mindful of that. So we've got to be mindful of that spade when we were talking about that. That's smoking, prevention, alcohol, all that kind. We got to be mindful of all of that because we have to do something to change this dynamic. Let's go on to the next slide. Yes.
The trend. Why it's coming down?
Okay.
This trend is coming down.
Yes, that's because of modern medicine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we have better medications now to treat the stuff, right? But it's coming down, but it's still higher in black folk. Yes.
You said that it's more prevalent with black men or men of color. Like I said, how much of that is attributed to just genetics? How much of that is attributed to genetics?
So a goodly amount of it is attributed to genetics, but also it's attributed to, believe it or not, the stress and the trauma that people of color have, especially in this country. If you lived in another country, right, you can see it's a difference between the way they treat you in other countries and the way they treat you here as a person of color in this country. The stress in this country is huge, right? And so what happens is the fact that when you put the genetics on top of the diet, on top of just being, especially a black male in this country, that's a whole lot of stress. And that's going to cause people to have a lot of hypertension and heart disease. Okay? So basically, we were trying to reduce the number of heart attacks in people, and that's why you're getting that reduction there. And then also with medications, we had aspirin used when it's appropriately used, blood pressure control, controlling a person's cholesterol, and that big one, that's smoking cessation. People smoked cigarettes. Cigarettes cause people to have heart attacks. So then we made the Surgeon General in the 1960s, early 70s said, smoking is not good for you, right? And we started cutting it down. And if you notice, they increased the price of cigarettes, right? It costs you, I don't know what, I think it's now $6, $7 a pack. Oh, Jesus. $13 a pack, right? So people are not smoking as much. People still smoke, but they're not smoking as much because of that modern medicine, because of the education, because of those things. It's actually going down, but it's still elevated, specifically for people of color. Let's go to the next slide. So basically, coronary artery disease is basically a narrowing of the artery because there's a lot of cholesterol that's building up on the arteries. That's what it basically comes down to. So that plaque and that cholesterol is there, and then what happens, the fact that one of those cholesterol things will flick off, and that will cause a heart attack, or a blood clot will cause a heart attack. It will just block that whole thing up. With no blood going through that vessel, it causes a lack of oxygen to their heart, and then their heart is going to start to die, and that's what's called a heart attack. So we've got to be able to make sure that we treat ourselves and keep that cholesterol lower. There are cholesterol-lowering medications that lower our cholesterol very, very well, and that's some of the reasons why not as many people are dying of heart disease as they used to. But we still have too many. Let's go to the next slide. So, risk factors, hereditary. We thought people get born that way. We got a microphone for this gentleman over here.
I noticed with the heart disease, you have not named any of the diet as culprit here. No diet is mentioned under the as problematic.
We get ready to talk about the diet.
Oh, okay.
It's covered.
Okay.
It's covered. All right, then. One of the things that we got to talk about is inactivity. Inactivity in heart disease is very, very important. And let me just kind of explain to you sometimes what happens. You know how you drive to the mall? And then what happens is the fact that people will drive around and drive around looking for the closest spot, right? That's inactivity, right? Park further away and walk, right? We will go into a building and we will take the elevator to the second floor. No, but we do. I mean, right? Walk up the stairs, right? I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to become more active because, quite frankly, if you actually measure, you could go on your phone and do this. If you measure the amount of steps that you should be taking, it's supposed to be 10,000 steps a day. And I can guarantee you, if you were to actually do it tomorrow, many of you will not be over 2,000 steps. And the fact of the matter is that when I was younger, we walked everywhere. Walked everywhere, right? I didn't have, there are people who will literally get in a car and drive across the street. Now, y'all think I'm joking, but it's true, right? You'll be at a mall, and you're at the grocery store over here, and now you want to go to Home Goods over there. People will get into their car and drive literally 200 feet to park in front of the Home Goods store. Just walk, right? If you can, walk up 2 flights of steps and walk down 4 flights of steps. It just gives you more steps to walk. Think about that, right? Train your children to do that, right? I mean, my parents used to make me run, and I had to go to the store for them, right? Nowadays, we don't send our children to the store, and I think sometimes some people say it's not safe outside, this, that, and the, I get it, but you got to do it, right? I had to run to the mailbox all the time as a kid, right? Send your kid to the mailbox, right? We don't do that. We basically wait, and we get in the car, and we drive, and we do that kind of stuff, and our children then are not actually used to actually now doing those types of exercises. Okay, and it's not, I'm not saying join a gym. I didn't say that, right? I didn't say get up and do 12,000 push-ups. I didn't say to do that. I'm just saying in your everyday life, just do some walking. Think about it. Think about it, okay? Obesity, obviously overweight is a problem, all that kind of good stuff. And believe it or not, most of us, unfortunately, are overweight. And then we say, I'm big boned. Or I need to have more weight because I look better with more weight, but you may not be looking, you may feel you're looking better, but you're actually hurting yourself inside. Now, I'm not saying that you got to be so thin that you're real, I'm not doing that at all. But I'm saying at this point now, you know that you're carrying a lot of weight. If you have a waist that's over 40, you're carrying too much weight, period. And if you have a certain size and you're less than 40, you may be still carrying a lot of weight. So it's important that we don't carry as much weight. High blood pressure, get your blood pressure checked. Get your blood pressure checked. Hypertension is a silent killer. people don't know they have high blood pressure, and they'll be going around for a long time with high blood pressure and don't realize it's high, and then that's when they have those heart attacks and basically drop dead real quick because they had high blood pressure. I've had patients whose blood pressure has been high for so long that when I started to slowly lower their blood pressures, they felt dizzy. And I checked their blood pressure, and it's still very high. But they were so used to walking around with a blood pressure of 190, which is supposed to be 120, that when I lowered it to 160, they felt lightheaded because that's what they were used to. So you gotta get your blood pressure checked. There's nothing good about smoking cigarettes. There's just nothing good about it. I just can't, it's just nothing. I can't even, there's nothing good about smoking cigarettes. I can't. You just got to stop as soon as you can possibly stop. High cholesterol is very, very important. They got the good cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, the LDL you want to be low. You want it to be under 100. Get to your doctor, draw the blood. Okay, it's all in the blood. If you go for your health visit and the doctor doesn't draw blood, he has not done a good physical. Okay, it's in that blood, right? Get the blood drawn and find out what your cholesterol is going to be. And if your cholesterol is high, you're going to have to change your diet. And for many of us, you're going to have to take a cholesterol lowering pill. You're going to have to do that. Get that cholesterol down because you would like to be able to live longer. And then obviously a factor is diabetes. Diabetes is wicked. A lot of us are becoming diabetics. Our children are becoming diabetics, right? And we used to have type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes were for the young people who their pancreas stopped working, so it really wasn't their fault. And so that means they have diabetes. They had to be on insulin. And then we have type 2 diabetes, which is a person who is usually obese, who's just not making enough insulin because they're obese, right? And then they were on the pills and stuff like that, sometimes insulin. The fact of the matter is that if you are type 2 diabetic and you're obese, you gotta lose that weight. And the key is the fact that we want you to take the insulin to get your sugar down, but by taking the insulin and using the insulin to get your sugar down, it's actually storing it as fat, so therefore you're gaining more weight, which is making it worse. So it's a vicious cycle. Okay, so diabetes, we gotta take care of that. We've got new medications out for that, and I think that take care of the diabetes, take care of the high blood pressure, take care of the cholesterol, walk a little bit more, move a little bit more, and don't worry about the heredity, right? Because that's in your DNA, that's what it is. Yes, sir?
Maybe I misunderstood you. I didn't get you right. When you say good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, I mean, are we talking about low, high, or there's something into the good and the bad you're talking about?
There are 3 different types of cholesterols. I'm going to talk about 2 of them. One of them we call the good cholesterol, which is the HDL. The higher it is, it protects you from getting heart disease. And then the LDL, the higher it is, it actually makes the heart disease worse. So you want your LDL, which we consider the bad cholesterol, to be low. And you want your HDL, which we consider the good cholesterol, to be high.
So how do you know if you're getting a good cholesterol and a bad? I'm not into this.
Get your blood drawn.
I have to do that?
You got to get your blood drawn, and then we can tell you what it is.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking that, okay, maybe what you eat will tell you if you're going to be having the bad cholesterol.
Okay, so what you eat can affect your cholesterol, and it does affect your cholesterol, but we won't know what your cholesterol is until we get your blood drawn.
Okay.
And it's usually a fasting cholesterol, meaning that you don't eat before you take the blood test. But your doctor will explain that to you.
Well, this is once physical, right?
Right, so you should have your physical once a year.
Yes.
And then they should definitely do it each time. Now, if your cholesterol is high, right, when they first do it, then we need to take care of that and deal with that cholesterol so you may be getting your blood drawn more than once a year, based on the level that it is. Yes, sir, right here.
People normally tell me that low blood pressure is as bad as high blood pressure. I have low blood pressure, so at times I get a little bit worried.
Okay, so anything in extreme is not good. So a very high blood pressure is not going to be good, and a very low blood pressure is not going to be good. But the low blood pressure, depending on how low we're talking about, normal blood pressure is usually 120/80. If your blood pressure is 110, that's great. If your blood pressure is 80, Houston, we got a problem. Right? So it just kind of depends on what number we're actually talking about, especially if a person's in the hospital and they're sick and their pressure is really low, not a good sign. Right? But if you're walking around and your blood pressure is 110, you're probably fine. And you're not feeling lightheaded and all kinds of stuff, you're fine. That's good, right? Depending on your size. I mean, obviously a person who's going to be 6'8" is going to have a different blood pressure than someone who's going to be, 5'2", right? The blood pressures may be slightly different, but everyone should be around that 120/80. That's the sweet spot there.
Sorry, can I take you back again? Because that's my trouble. I'm not going to get my blood drawn every day. Right, okay. As I move forward, I want to be careful what I eat. Whether it goes high or goes low. But like what you said, I really want to know what will give me the bad cholesterol.
Okay.
Yes, if it has to be food
So-
issue or
Right, so it's a food issue, but I want to make sure, and that's going to be the fats that you're eating in your food. That's going to give you the cholesterols, right? But what I want to say to you is the fact that you have to get your cholesterol checked, because changing your diet will correct your cholesterol by about 10%. That's all. Only about 10%. So let's just say if you have an LDL of 200, and I want to get that LDL down to 100. If you do the best diet you could possibly do, you're going to probably get it down 10%, which is about to 180. You still got 80 points to go. You need to be on some medication. Does that make sense? So your diet is very good. You need to be able to correct your diet. That'd be a great thing. But sometimes diet alone will not do it. And you have to be on the medication. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so 5 major symptoms of a heart attack. I bring this up because I'm going to tell you why. Folks will say that they got pain in their chest or in their jaw, back or neck or in their left arm. They're feeling weak. A person can say they got some discomfort in their arms and shoulders, shortness of breath. And they'll sit there and look at their wife and look at their children and say, oh, I got this pain. And they'll say, okay, we got to go to the hospital. And the friend says, no, I'm not going to go. I don't have to go. I'm okay. I'm okay. Let's see what's going to happen. No, what's going to happen is you're going to die. Like, if you got that pain, right, if you got the symptom, go to the hospital. Because when sudden death hits you, it is sudden. Right? It's not going to creep up on you and keep saying, okay, okay, okay. No, you just go. So if you feel those symptoms, if you're having some pain in your chest, pain in your jaw, pain in your neck, pain going down your left arm, if you're feeling short of breath, if you're feeling lightheaded and that kind of stuff, go to the emergency room. That is why it's there. Let me tell you as a physician, it's not your heart. Don't let the undertaker say, yeah, it was his heart. Right? I have to say it to the men, because the men, the first thing they're going to say is, that's okay, I'm not going to go, I got a little indigestion, I'm going to be okay. You might not be. So if you're having any of those symptoms, do not ignore them. Do not ignore them. Dr. Brink said, do not turn to your neighbor and say, please don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it, because that's what we do. And then the family's sitting there saying, well, you know, he said he was having chest pain and all that kind of stuff, and I wanted him to go to the hospital, but he didn't go to the hospital. Then he went to bed, and then he didn't wake up. It's like, ugh. Right? And had he gone, we have so much modern medicine that could have taken care of that pretty quickly. Okay? Yes, sir.
I always wanted to know, some symptoms of a heart attack. I wanted to, definitively, I wanted to know the difference between the symptoms for a heart attack and the symptoms for a stroke.
So the difference between that is a heart attack is a attack on the heart, and a stroke is an attack on the brain. You see what I'm saying? One's the brain and one's the heart. So if you're having a person who's having weakness, right, in their arms or in their legs, anything like that at all, they can't see, they're having a neurologic issue, they could be having a stroke. But when it comes to the heart attacks, it's going to be pain in the chest, on the left arm, shortness of breath, blah, 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 blah. So one is the brain, and one, it's the same thing. It's the blood clot or the oxygen not getting to the tissue, but one is the tissue of the brain, and one is the tissue of the heart. Okay? Yes.
So I saw pain or discomfort in the back. Is there any specific area of the back?
So it's going to be that mid portion of the back that's right here. However, it can be almost anywhere. If that pain comes on suddenly and it hurts, right, that may be an issue. And it also may be the fact that you may have an aneurysm, but I'm not going to go into all that. That's what they pay me for. But I will say this to you. Let me figure that out. You don't figure that out at home. Let me figure it out. If you're having those symptoms, go to the hospital and let me figure it out, because that's what will save your life, right? It could be almost anything and it could be nothing. But let me say that to you. Don't you say that to yourself. Next slide. So some of the tests that you're going to have is an EKG, an echocardiogram. That's where they take the picture like a sonogram of your heart, exercise stress test, chest x-rays, a cardiac catheterization. We used to go on your groin. Now they go into your wrist and all that kind of stuff. They take a look at your heart and all that kind of stuff. And an angiogram, they actually take pictures of your heart and all those vessels to see what's going on. So those types of things. But all those type of diagnostic tests is why that trend is going down, because we got all this stuff that we are able to do at this point now. In the early 1970s, when somebody was having a heart attack, what did the doctors do? Nothing. We would look at you in the bed. They wasn't doing anything because they didn't have anything to really do, right? They didn't. And then modern medicine has really peaked off. There's so many other things that we can actually do, and that's why the trend is going down. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, treatment, medication to treat the high cholesterol, hypertension, if you have an irregular heartbeat, low blood flow, whatever it is, surgical procedures, lifestyle changes, you gotta have a healthy diet, exercise, and stop smoking. Let's go to the next slide. So, hypertension, 1 in 3 people in the United States have high blood pressure. So people in here got high blood pressure. That's the reality situation. It's an increased risk for heart disease, and you mentioned stroke, silent killer, and you need to have your blood pressure monitored. So when you see, I always say this, the blood pressure cuffs are very, very, very inexpensive. Inexpensive, right? It's inexpensive. So you can actually purchase one and just take your own blood pressure at home. Right? If your blood pressure is high, then you know to go back to your doctor and say, my blood pressure is a little high. I've been checking it, and it's a little high, right? And this is the blood pressure machine I was using. Check your blood pressure. It's okay. Next slide.
Just from what I've heard from some other people when things happen, now, not everybody are on the same level. They just feel, well, I don't have an insurance. I can't even go, even you that have an insurance, your insurance company tells you save more money if you go to the not emergency room, one of these.
Urgent care centers?
Yes,
Okay.
right, you go in there. But you're talking about people who don't even have the insurance. Okay. How do they survive these situations that you have to go see the doctor or whatever?
So if you, there are what we call federally qualified health centers. Federally qualified health centers. And you have them in Baltimore County. One is called Chase Brexton. We've got Total Health Care. We've got Baltimore Medical Systems. There are Giant Medical Systems. There are certain places that are called federally qualified health centers. FQHCs are there for people who don't have health insurance, and for people who may not, even if they're not even documented, they can go to those places, right? Now, they're not going to give you the best tertiary care, meaning that hospital care, but it'll give you great preventative care, regular physicals, vaccines, and medications for your regular medications. And you guys know that Walmart has a great pharmacy. Walmart has medications for $2 a month. It's got to be on their formulary, but those are great medications. So if you know that your doctor says, well, I'm going to put you on a high blood pressure medication and you don't have any insurance, tell the doctor, wait 1 second, let's look up Walmart's $2 medications per month, and then pick one of the blood pressure medicines that's on that formulary, and then you can go onto Walmart and get it for $2, right? So there's ways around the fact that you don't have health insurance, right? And the reality situation is the fact that if you do have something that is emergent, right, and you got to go to the hospitals can't turn you down. So they can still take care of you. Now, but there's going to be a bill out there somewhere, and I'm not too sure, depending on how much money you actually have, blah, 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 blah. We're going to have to deal with that bill. But the fact of the matter is, I'd rather be living with a bill than dead without one, right? So that's the difference, right? They're going to take care of you if you're there with your emergencies and that kind of stuff. So for high blood pressure, your diet's got to be low in sodium. That's the salt. Can I just say to you guys, it pains me to see a parent sprinkle salt on their child's food. The child wouldn't know about the salt, but then putting salt on it, right? No, you didn't have to do that, right? Let's lower the salt intake. That's going to be very, very important. That's why I was saying to you that, fish may be a decent meal, but we have salted fish. That makes it a difference, right? Because it's salted. So I would be eating less of the salted fish than I would a regular fresh fish. Okay? Overweight, physical inactivity, alcohol use, tobacco use, it's all the same thing, guys. For all these different diseases, it's all the same stuff. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. So I always keep going back, eating a healthy diet, fruits and vegetables. Please don't turn your vegetable into a meat. If you're going to eat vegetables, when you eat the vegetables, that should be the lion's share of your plate, right? Having a piece of fish this big, right, and having 3 little corn kernels up there is not going to work, right? You really want to be able to have a goodly amount of the greens and the salads and things like that, not soaking in fats and stuff like that, but much more of a healthier diet with that. So having kale, having spinach, but eating it raw almost as a salad would be very, very helpful for you, as opposed to just drenching it in butter and drenching it in coconut oil or peanut oil or something like that. That's just, it may taste delicious. I'm not saying it doesn't taste delicious, but I'm going to say to you that that's a bit much. We've got to cut it down some. Yes.
I like this broccoli. Is it good too?
What do you say?
Broccoli.
Broccoli, yeah, broccoli's fine. The problem is that you can't put all that cheese on it. Right? You can have it, steam it, right? And then season a little bit, and especially with seasonings that don't have the salt in them. It gives you the flavor. And then you can have that. That's not a problem at all. Right? Vegetables are going to be fine. Any vegetable you have is going to be fine. It's the fact that you just cannot change it to a meat, because that's what we tend to do. I will sometimes put vegetable broth, right, in the vegetables that I'm making, right? Sometimes I'll put a low sodium chicken broth to kind of give it some flavor, for more flavor, right? That's, you try those types of things as opposed to a piece of a smoked meat, right? That's because you're just changing it to a meat. We talk about the physical activity, limiting your alcohol, and stop smoking. That just comes out to the whole thing. Next slide.
It's like alcohol and smoking are linked to so many diseases. Sorry. So many diseases. Smoking and alcohol intake.
Yes.
Like now, the cigarette manufacturers, they don't want to go out of the market. Now they came up with e-cigarettes, like vape, hookah, many of them. Now, all these alternative smoking, are they not still harmful to human?
Very harmful. They're very, very, very harmful. They still have the carcinogens in them. Very, very, very harmful. So don't let them make you think that they're not harmful. They're still very harmful. The tobacco industry told us for years that there was nothing wrong with cigarette smoking. They lied. If you look at do you guys know who Dr. Spock is? Dr. Spock was a guy, a doctor, way back in the 50s and all that kind of 60s, that kind of stuff. And he would have these books that he would tell you what to do. You know, if you had any issues, that kind of stuff. He would tell the pregnant women that when they got a little nervous and stuff like that, that they should sit down, have a drink, and smoke a cigarette. Pregnant women, right? In the 60s and 70s and stuff like that, doctors smoked, nurses smoked. You could smoke in the hospital, right? But as you learn and you know better, you have to do better, right? So then we cut a lot of that stuff out and said, you know, you cannot smoke in a hospital. You cannot do this. You cannot do that. And that's what's making the rates go down by not doing those type of things. All right, then. The big one, prostate cancer. This is what I like to talk to men about, prostate cancer. This is huge. Next slide. This is one of the things that men don't want to talk about. But many other men have prostate cancer, right? It basically has abnormal cells in the man's prostate. It's growing uncontrollably. It can grow slowly. It can grow quickly. Usually, if a man is young, it's going to grow quick. If a man is older, who's like in his 80s, it's going to probably grow slow. Most men, if not all, when they're 80 years old, will have prostate cancer. That 80-year-old man will probably die with prostate cancer, not of it. But a 40-year-old man who gets prostate cancer is going to probably die of prostate cancer, not with it, if he doesn't get it checked out and doesn't get it treated. Does that make sense? The younger you are, the more harmful it could possibly be. And men don't want to go to the doctor. When you go to the doctor, I'm going to bend you over and I'm going to stick my finger in your rectum. I've got to feel for the prostate. There's no other way for me to do it. That's it. Understand it, accept it, and bend the hell over. I can't, there's nothing, I can't. Stop all this other stuff. You know, you can't do that to me. Stop it. I'm trying to save your life, right? It's just bend over. I just don't understand any other way of saying it, right? I've got to feel the prostate to see if there's anything abnormal there. I've got to draw your blood to see if you got a PSA, to see if it's elevated. If it is elevated or if I feel something, I got to get a biopsy, especially for the young men, and especially for men of color, because men of color get it at an earlier age and it's more aggressive. Period, point blank. That's just the way it is. We got to, and I think that you can endure that prostate exam. It's not a major issue, but you can endure that so we can actually save your life. We got to be able to detect it much earlier. Let's go to the next slide. Yes.
I had about 50 years ago prostate enlargement. About 50 years ago, I had prostate enlargement. Now, can it develop to prostate cancer? Or what is the difference between prostate cancer and prostate enlargement?
Prostate cancer and prostate what?
Enlargement.
Oh,
Enlargement.
okay. So the enlargement of the prostate is just a prostate that gets a little bigger, right? And older men will get that. What I mean by older men, when you turn about 50 or so, you'll realize that your stream may not be as strong. You'll realize that you run into the bathroom a little quicker and all that kind of stuff. You got a little urgency, so that what will happen is the fact that you're fine, and then you say, I gotta go to the bathroom now, right? Whereas that's not how it was when you were younger. You'll realize that you don't empty your bladder as much. You got a little bit left over, right? That's why you have a large prostate, all right? We call it a hypertrophied prostate. It's a little bigger. So then at that point, I may have to do some surgical procedures on it to kind of reduce it a little bit so it's not as big and it's not giving you those symptoms. That's not a major issue at all. It's an issue, but it's not cancer, right? Cancer is when you have the abnormal cells growing that can spread to different parts of the body, and that is what will kill you.
Is the prostate, the older you get, even if you don't have it the majority of your young life, say if you live to be 70, 80 years old, is it something you're inevitably going to get?
So the answer to that, unfortunately, is yes. Most 80-year-old men will have prostate cancer. The difference is an 80-year-old man could live to 90 or 100 with prostate cancer. But a 40-year-old man is not going to make it to 55. You see what I'm saying? So the younger you are, I got to get on top of that. If a man is 85 years old and has prostate cancer, guess what? I'm not going to be giving him radiation and surgery and that kind of stuff. I can say, okay, he'll probably die with it. Enjoy your life, my brother, right? You're not symptomatic, okay. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, we're going to all get it, right? There's not a problem with that. But the issue is going to be when you're a young man, when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60. That's where the issue comes in. When you're 80 and 90, I'm not worried about it. There ain't no way around that. You know, that's life. You know, welcome to the jungle. We're going to all die now.
I mean, we're going to die.
Yeah, I mean,
every man's going to get.
if you live long enough as a man, you will probably have prostate cancer, whether you want it or not. Well, who wants prostate cancer?
Whether it's hereditary or not.
Right now, you're gonna get it. That's what's gonna happen. Yeah.
So you have an enlarged prostate. You have different options how to take care of it. But then you feel, where am I going? What are the chances that, okay, you just having an enlarged prostate, but the chances of it developing to having a cancer, what are the percentage rates?
Okay. So what happens is the fact that if you're having some symptoms, or if your prostate is enlarged, I have to then check it. I got to draw your blood. If those are not looking like you have any problems at all, no masses in there, and your PSA is not very elevated, all that kind of stuff, I may just watch it. But I may have to say, oh, we got to biopsy this. And then I can biopsy it. And then based on what I see, I will then tell you how often you need to come back for me to check on it. Right? And then we have to keep checking to make sure it's going to not develop into something more than that. When men become 85 and 90 years old, we stop checking. I don't need to keep looking, right? Because I'm not going to do anything about it. Because when a person has a very slow-growing prostate cancer, it's going to, it wouldn't do anything to him for another, what we'll say, 7 to 15 years. So if you're 85 years old, right? I mean, I'm not going to do anything about that. So live your life, have a good time, blah, 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 right? I'm not going to do much about it. But if you're 50, I got to do a lot about it. Okay? So it is prevalent. 1 in 4 new diagnosed cancers each year among men. It's the second leading cause of cancer and death among men. Lung is the first one. and about 3,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer this year. You got to understand, this is very common. This is very common. You'll be surprised, but there are probably men in this room right now who have had prostate cancer, and we don't talk about it. So I will tell you, if you develop prostate cancer, if the doctor thinks you have that, I'm going to say that you need to talk to your doctors, talk to your specialists, and then try to talk to the pastor. I'm putting it on you, Pastor. The reason why is because if you talk to the pastor, the second guy who gets prostate cancer, the pastor will know who the first guy is. And then based on the situation, he could talk to them separately and then ask, is it okay if I put you guys together? Because I do that at my church as a physician, right? Men come to me and whisper to me that, yeah, I just went to the hospital and I got the prostate cancer. I said, okay, we talk about it, all that kind of good stuff. I know other men in the church who've had prostate cancer. So I go to them and say, listen, there's another guy in the church, didn't tell him who it was, who got prostate cancer. Would you be interested in talking to them about your thing? And they go, yeah. I said, okay, I'll talk to you later. I go back to that person and say, hey, there's another guy who had prostate cancer who's willing to talk to you. Would you want to talk to them? Yeah, okay, we'll keep this confidential, and then I pair them up together. Because he went through that. I've never gone through that. I can tell you medically what that means, but he can tell you as a married man what that means. What happened with his wife? How did they discuss that? Do you see what I'm saying? That makes a huge difference, right? The fact of the matter is that you're going for prostate cancer and you have to have surgery. There's a possibility that you may not be able to have an erection after that. That's real. So what did you do in regard to that? There's a possibility that you won't walk around and be dribbling, right? Just leaking and dribbling urine, right? What does he do regarding that? There are certain things that they do, right? But if you haven't gone through that, you don't know that. And so it's important that you talk to other men. There may be somebody who went to a doctor and said, listen, I wouldn't go to that doctor. Or I went to a doctor who was great, right? So I know that because I refer people to different doctors, right? And I know the ones who are really good and the ones who I would say, oh, I wouldn't necessarily go to that person. Every year there are new procedures that are coming out, right? So doctors tend to recommend what they are good at. That may not be what necessarily you need. Did that make sense? If I'm a surgeon and I've been doing surgery for the past 30 years, I may want to cut. If I'm a radiologist, a radiation oncologist, I may want to give radiation therapy, right? If I'm a new doctor, I may want to use the robotic thing. You see what I'm saying? So everybody does what they do very well. I have to find out what kind of cancer you have, where it was spread to, what was going on, blah, 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 to determine what's probably the best approach. But unless you have a conversation with other people, you don't know that because you're listening to a doctor who's telling you what they do very well. Did that make sense? So I understand it's private for you. I understand you're going through that, and it may be a little embarrassing for you, but the fact of the matter is that we're going to have to talk about this because it is a matter of life and death. Let's go to the next slide. So if you're having some difficulty starting urination, a weak or uninterrupted flow, frequently urinating, especially at night, difficulty emptying your bladder, unexpected weight loss, pain or burning during urination, blood in the urine or in the semen, a constant pain in the lower back, thighs, or pelvis, painful ejaculation, or fatigue, okay? Those symptoms are symptoms, could be of prostate cancer, but can be of other type of prostate issues or none of them at all. But if you have any of those, please go get checked out. Let somebody do an exam on you to figure out what is actually going Things start to change, and you guys know the difference between what you were doing and what's happening. You have to go to the doctors. Also, I guess recommend just going to the doctors every year anyway. Just go to the doctor. Go to the doctor, get checked out so they can check out your whole entire body, right? If your doctor's not asking you to take your clothes off, there's a problem. When I used to see my patients, I have to see every part of your body. I need to see your back. I need to see the skin on your back. I need to see the back of your head. I need to see the lower back, right? I need to see what is going on because you have some things on a person's body that they don't know they have, right? Especially sometimes if it's not a married man because no one, like his wife is not looking at his body, right? And so I need to see that, what's going on. That's going to be very, very important. So your doctor needs to take your clothes off. Your doctor needs to actually draw some blood, right? They need to put their hands on you, right? That's important, right? That is not invasive. The doctor should be talking to you. I've had patients who say, Dr. Branch, you ask too many questions because I'm a doctor. Those questions make a difference, right? And when I ask specific questions that are personal questions, I'm asking them for a reason because based on your answer, that could dictate that you could have a specific type of a disease. And rather than me thinking it's A, it could possibly be B. Yes, sir.
I want to know, it says symptoms, frequent urination, especially at night. Is it only prostate that can cause frequent urination? Because during my research, I saw that if you are diabetics too, type 2, especially type 2 diabetics,
Right.
you have frequent urination too.
Right. So you're right. Those symptoms can be caused by different things, but those symptoms are not normal. So therefore, if you have diabetes and you're having frequent urination, especially at night, and the doctor says that's the reason why you're having that, okay. But guess what? If I treat your diabetes, you shouldn't have it any longer. Does that make sense? The reason why you have the frequent urination with diabetes is because you have a lot of sugar in your urine, which makes you now urinate. I should treat your diabetes and get that sugar out of your urine. Get that protein out of your urine. Does that make sense? So you should, just because you're a diabetic, you should not have frequency urination for the rest of your life. And you say, oh, I'm a diabetic. No, that's not true. I should have treated that, right? And then that should be resolved. And then if it comes back, I have to now check to see why it came back. And if it comes back, don't assume it's diabetes. Yes.
So when you talk about frequent urination, so how many times, in the night can you deem as frequent?
Okay, let me say this. Let me say this to you, Pastor. When you were younger, and I'm not talking about the past, I'm just going to talk about you as a whole. When you were younger, you probably could sleep through the whole night, right? Get up in the morning, right? Probably had an erection, and you got to stand there, and then you urinate, and it is strong and hard, right? That's what happened with men. There becomes a time in our life that we start waking up in the middle of the night, okay? We don't have the erection that we used to have, right? That's why you should be seeing your doctor every year, right? It just happens. And then what we tend to do, we say, oh, I had to get up in the middle of the night. Then I got up twice. Then I had to get up 3 times. Well, when you were starting to get up in the middle of the night the first time, you should have been going to your doctor because I should be finding out and saying to myself, what is your baseline? Baseline is very, very important. Let me kind of give you an example of that. A person's PSA, that's a prostate-specific antigen. I'm looking for prostate cancer. I'm not only looking for the actual number, I'm also looking for the change in the number. So if a person comes to me and they have a PSA, it's supposed to be less than 1. Let's just say, right? 0.9, 0.5, that kind of a thing. If a person comes to me and they have a PSA that's 15, I'm like, oh, Suki, something going on here. I got to figure out what's going on. If a person comes to me and they have a PSA of 0.7, I say, oh, that's pretty good. But if they come back to me next year and their PSA is 1.5, my eyebrow goes up. It's not high, but it's different from what it was before. You see what I'm saying? Right? So now I'm saying to myself, ooh, something could be going on here. Why is that important? Because I need to catch it when it's low. Because once it's high, the horse may be already out the barn. And then now has spread to other parts of your body. And so now we got an issue. So that's why it's important. Go when you're young, 40 years old, right? Get checked out, get your vaccines, get your prostate, get everything checked out, get your blood and all that kind of stuff checked out. And then when you go back to next year, we compare it. And then we can see if something significantly different. Same thing with women go through mammograms and pap smears and all that kind of good stuff. That's why they do that. That you can compare what's going on. That's what you really want to happen.
So it's better if it comes low. Like I think last year it was 0.8, but this year is 0.6.
Right. So he said if last year was 0.8, then it was 0.6. See, I'm not as concerned. But if it went up to 1.8, I'd be like, oh, let's talk a little bit more. Let's check this again. I may have, you know what I'm saying? I'm feeling a little bit more, you know what I mean? We have to say maybe there's an issue. But 0.8 to 0.6, you're fine. But now you know that. So if it ever jumped up, we're on top of it. And that's what we need. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Because then at that point, he didn't have the cancer in his system that long for it to actually spread somewhere, right? So I would rather be able to take care of that and deal with that when he's much younger. Yes?
So what will be that trigger number? That is that number that, God forbid, you ever hit or you never want to hit as far as the PSA number?
There is no trigger number because as a physician, I practice medicine. I'm just practicing. Right? It's the art of medicine. So I'm not going to sit here and say to you that your number was 1, so therefore I'm not going to be concerned or I am going to be concerned. If your number was 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 1, I'm concerned. Right? It's just that it shifted. Something's different, so I got to now start looking. Right? But if I got you the first time, it was 1, then it was 1, then it was 1, then it was 1, I'm not as concerned. Does that make sense? So it's just one of those types of things that I'm looking at the person, I'm trying to see exactly who they are, I'm trying to see what the prostate felt like. Do they have a family history of prostate cancer? I'm looking at a lot of different things as it relates to that one individual male. So we can't say, this number is a problem. Now I can tell you, if you come in your prostate PSA is 15, I got a problem. Yeah, I mean, if your PSA is 7, I got a problem the first time I'm seeing it, right? That's an issue for me, right? But if you had prostate cancer and your PSA was 7 and then went down to 3, and it's 3, and it's 3, and it's 3, and it's 3, I may not be as concerned. But if it jumped to 4, I'm saying, ooh, maybe it's coming back. So it's the art of medicine, and we have to actually take each person individually. Yes.
This could be beneficial to others too. When Ed or Joe talk about frequent urination, may not be enlarged prostate, could be diabetes and so on. So that takes my mind back to, because you don't have it here, the CPAP machine, right? So this is a discussion I had with my physician about snoring, right? He said the problem with some of us, because then I have to go for sleep therapy, right? He said, like you said, because of the medicine what is happening, people are not living longer, things are being done. So I said, look, because you are snoring, you're overworking your system. And that will add up to some other problem. It's like, I use this. My husband used it. Why can't you use it? I said, no, how can I put that on my nose and then go to sleep? But I noticed when I use that, I have a good sleep. I don't have to wake up several times to go to pee. So there was a difference. I found out that I could have a longer hours of sleep without any disturbance, like waking every 1 hour or 2 hours. So I thought I should just bring that out. So it says that help your system, your organs, because when you snore, you're overworking the system, and that leads to some other problem.
So you're talking about sleep apnea. Yes. You're talking about a person snoring. It's not just the snoring. The snoring is not necessarily the issue. The issue is that you're not breathing, right? And then you have this guttural snore because now you got to push that thing out. So now you're snoring, right? So if you have sleep apnea, the reason why they put it on is because it allows you to then continuously breathe, and then that will cut down on all the other symptoms that you're having many a times, like high blood pressure, like the having the problem with urinations or blah, 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 blah. It's helping you. That CPAP machine is really helping a person with sleep apnea, but many people don't want to use it, right? Many wives don't want it in the bedroom with them because you hear that, right? They're like, oh, I don't want to hear that, right? You know, that kind of a thing. So, but you have to get used to it, right? And a lot of times, truth be told, that I would tell the partners of the person who has sleep apnea, I say, just give it a few days. The reason why is because he will sleep all night. You're hearing that machine, but you won't hear the snoring because you've been sleeping next to that snoring for years. Right? And you'd be sitting there saying, you know, they'd be fighting to see who can get into the bedroom first because she wants to get to sleep first, because if she gets to sleep first, then she'll have to hear. You know, I hear it all, right? That happens. That's what happens all the time. Or they just basically say, listen, we sleep in your separate rooms, right? You can sometimes they can start sleeping in separate rooms because one person can't take it, right? But by using the CPAP mask, it actually helps the individual with their health. And a lot of times, it helps the relationship between the two people.
I don't know, maybe you said this earlier on. Did you say diabetes can be treated?
Or diabetes can definitely be treated, right? When diabetes first came, when we first was dealing with diabetes, people died very early with diabetes. Type 1 diabetics were dying by 12 and 15 years old, not really making it to 30 years old, right? People who had type 2 diabetes get their legs cut off and going blind. It was a mess, right? There are a lot of medications, which are excellent medications, that will treat diabetes. But one of the things you've got to be very wary of is the fact that people who are diabetic always look at the sugar level. And basically, I can get anybody's sugar down if I give them enough insulin. The problem with that is that every time I give you the insulin with that high sugar, you're basically storing fat. So a person I'm giving all that insulin to is just gaining weight, which is making the diabetes worse. So you can treat it because we have a lot of different types and classes of medications to treat diabetes. Much better than in the 60s and the 70s. We were giving people pig insulin. Do you remember, anybody remember that? Or beef insulin. We have much better insulins now. We have much better drugs at this particular time that can treat diabetes. We want you to take those drugs. A lot of them are expensive, but you can definitely treat diabetes. But the key to that is to basically have a much better diet and exercise. I said earlier that diabetes runs in my family because nobody in my family runs, right? You gotta get up and you gotta be doing some more. right? And I always think that the best way to do activity is in your everyday life. Don't say, I'm gonna go to the gym. It's not gonna happen, right? And then you go to the gym and you're there for a week, and now you got pain in your back, your knee hurts. Don't do all that, right? Or if you want to go to the gym, go into the pool and just swim a few laps in the pool, or just walk around in the pool. That's going to help you a lot. Or walk around the track, right? That'll help you out. That'll increase your exercise if you feel like you really need to go there. But please don't go there trying to lift 200 pounds, right? And trying to get muscles. Don't do all that, right? Don't, please, because you're going to hurt yourself. And once you hurt yourself or pull a muscle, when you pull a muscle at 50, you remember it for the rest of your life. If you pull a muscle at 20, you forget about it in 3 weeks, right? So my point is the fact that in your everyday life, think about how you're going to walk up the stairs and walk a further distance, walk around the corner. And also, if you have stairs in your house, walk up and down the stairs. Stop calling the grandchildren. Come over here, Sal, come over here and bring me this and bring me that. No, if you really want that ice cream, get up and get it yourself. Right? You know, my parents used to call me, because, you know, before I was growing up, before they had remote controls, I was the remote control. Right? They would sit there and come on in here, and I turn the channel to, gosh, right? We need to get up. We need to get right. We got to move, because if you don't use it, you will lose it. Next slide. So we talked about the prostate-specific antigen in a direct rectal exam, the digital rectal exam. We've talked about these right here, no problem at all. And then any type of positive results indicates you need further testing. And I'm going to say to you, if you get a positive result on the rectal exam, or if you get an elevated PSA and a doctor says, Houston, we may have a problem, that's when you should start talking to other people. Don't get caught out there going to the urologist, going to the oncologist, going to the radiation. You go into all these doctors, and then now you want to have a conversation, and you're now 3 months into this. And now you want to have a talk about, well, maybe I should get a second opinion. Well, we should have been getting that second opinion a long time ago, because now the longer that we're holding off, it's not good, right? So we don't want to wait another 6 months before something is done. So as soon as there's a problem and all that kind of stuff, make that phone call. Next slide. Biopsies. We got to take tissue is always the issue. We take a little biopsy. We're looking at to see if the person has cancer. And a transrectal ultrasound. That's when we have to go through your rectum itself, and we're going to do an ultrasound of your prostate to see if there's any abnormalities in the prostate itself. It sounds a little bit worse than it really is. Next slide. Basically, we're going to keep monitoring your PSA and doing a digital rectal exam. Sometimes we have to remove the prostate itself, radiation therapy, and one of the things that we do also is hormonal therapy. We can give you certain types of hormones, and that will actually help to reduce the burden of the cancer also, because some cancers are very, very responsive to hormonal therapy. Yes?
You said removal of the prostate.
Yes.
It's something we don't need?
Okay, well,
I mean, I'm just saying.
okay. So there's certain things, yes, you do need your prostate, right? Because, and I won't get into the whole thing, but it helps you with ejaculations, blah, 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 blah. You need your prostate. However, once you have cancer of the prostate, you don't need a prostate. Right, like at that point, we got to get rid of it because it's a problem, right? But you do need your prostate in that sense. Let's go to the next slide, okay? If you're 40 years or older, talk to your doctor to see if you need prostate cancer screening. If you had, if your father or your grandfather had prostate cancer at a younger age than 40, you may have to go in before 40, right? But 40 years old for an African-American male, start getting it taken care of. Is there anybody here who's younger than 40 years old? So if no one here is younger than 40, everybody should have a prostate check every year. unless the doctor tells you you need it more frequently. So if you've never had it, go to the doctor. Tell them I sent you.
Dr. Branch,
Yes.
so if at the age of 50 or 55 you don't have prostate cancer, so what is the possibility that you can have it the next 5 years?
There's still a possibility of that. Every man is going to get it by 80, 85 years old, right? The question is going to be what type of prostate cancer is it going to be? It's going to be very, very slow growing, or is it going to be fast growing, right? The younger you are, usually the faster it's going to grow. But if you're going to have prostate cancer, what I say to myself is, do you have more than 10?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We're smiling here. Why did God create us that we must have?
My rule
Can
is
provide us answer to that.
if you are going to probably live more than 10 years, I'm going to deal with your prostate cancer. If your life expectancy should be more than 10 years, I'm going to deal with your prostate cancer. If your life expectancy is probably going to be less than 10 years, I may not deal with it. Right? So, if you are a 85-year-old man who's bedridden, who got like multiple medical problems, I'm not dealing with your prostate. But if you're an 85-year-old man who's jogging every day, I'm gonna deal with it. Because it's not your age necessarily, it's the expectancy of your life for me, right? So you could be a 40-year-old person who has significant other problems with your heart and stroke and blah, 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 blah. And I may say we're not going to deal with the prostate stuff. Yes, sir.
About a year ago, I went to see my doctor who checks me. He said I have elevated PSA. I should go and see urologist. So when I went to the urologist, he said before checking me at all, I should give him $250. That's June this year. So I had $18 then, so I had to go back, checking me only $250. So I didn't go there. Then in June this year, I went to my doctor again. He said I should go back there, that they are going to help me about the money. Then when I called the doctor again, book the time I have to come, he said I should come with my insurance, and I have no insurance. So I did not go. So until now I did not go. But what I discovered is that I urinate about by 11 in the night, 1 in the night, then about 7 months, about once in the night. But in the day I can urinate about 8 times because I drink a lot of water. Is it because I drink a lot of water that I go to the toilet in the day like that? Am I not going to the doctor? What has it done? Can it do for me?
So you have a lot of things that you just talked about. I think what you're saying, the last thing you said is because you drink a lot of water, that you urinate a lot. That may be the case, but I would have to actually check out your urine and check out other things to make sure that that's the reason why you're drinking so much, that you're urinating so much. Because I don't chalk off and say, someone has told me they drink a lot of water, so therefore they urinate a lot. That may be the case, but I got to make sure that's not the case. Then you said to me that you've gone to the doctor, you have some co-pays, or you have to pay them money and stuff like that, and then you don't have insurance, so you go back. So is that what you were saying to me? Yeah, so I think that's why it's important that I think the federally qualified health centers, one that you have here in the county is Chase Braxton. That's right there on, it's not Security Mall, it's oh gosh, it's right on Liberty. Oh, really? Okay, all right then. Okay, well then, Chase Braxton is now in security. Okay, so that means they must be over there with the health center, with the county health department. Okay then, so you can go to the Chase, and then they would be able to do some of that testing for you, and they call it on a sliding scale, right? And then that would be, it should not be $250 by any means. Yeah, and they'll be able to help you out with that. Yeah, yeah, he'll come out for,
Grandpa, we need to find out, you should have insurance because you have green card. Yeah, apply for your citizenship very soon. So we'll get your insurance, or Medicare or Medicaid, whatever.
yeah.
We'll work on that.
Let's go to the next slide. I'm gonna move it along. Okay, so colon and rectal cancer, obviously, yes.
Before we move to rectal prostate cancer, what is it that we need to watch out for or to avoid? Like we talked about symptoms, treatment, the cause of that prostate cancer.
So at this point now, the only thing I can say about prostate cancer is you can't have the smoking. Smoking will increase your risk for prostate cancer. Other than that, there's not really much more you're going to be able to do, but get checked out. But smoking is one of the things that's going to increase your risk for having prostate cancer. But other than that, get checked out. Yeah. Next slide, colon rectal cancer. Just want to kind of briefly just talk about that. The reason why is because we have a wonderful screen. I'm going to go through this very quickly. We have a wonderful screening test. So the colon part is where the rectum is. It's where you evacuate for your stool. Basically, we have a wonderful colonoscopy, which is a test to take a little scope and they look up into your rectum to see if you have anything. The worst part of the test itself is the day before when you have to drink all the fluid. Anybody had a colonoscopy here? Right? You got to drink all that fluid, and then you got to poop all night and all that kind of good stuff. And once you clear it out, they then take a look up there, right? I can say that because many men will say, I don't want to have that done. Get over it. By the time you're 50 years old, you need to get it. You need to have a colonoscopy. We need to look for it. Colon cancer is a type of cancer that men will get, and it can kill you. So it's important, get your screening. I just jumped and all that kind of good stuff. But you can see what the colon is. You see all that, all those little wormy looking things. That's a small colon. What I'm talking about is the one on the outside. The big snake-like looking thing, that is going to be your colon. We're looking for colon cancer, abnormal growth. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer-related death in the United States. I guess want to get you know, it's real. Smoking is going to be a problem. A lot of red meat's going to be a problem, right? You need to have that roughage and that, the vegetables that'll help you out a lot with that. If you have a change in your bowels, it's important to go to your doctor and talk about that. If you're finding yourself having a lot of diarrhea for some reason, you need to talk to your doctor about that. And if you find yourself being constipated, it's a change in bowels, you need to talk to your doctor about that, okay? If you're over the age of 50, you need to get the colonoscopy. Yes, Pastor?
So Branch, the one they send to you at home that you have to, mail your poo to them, what is that called?
So you do have the test that you can look. They're looking for blood in your stool, and they're looking for certain type of markers in your stool. Those are decent tests. I'm not going to say it's not a problem, but I will say to you that the gold standard is the colonoscopy, having a doctor look up there to see what they see. Because if you have what we call as a polyp, that's the precursor to a cancer. If I see it, I snip it out, I take it out, and then I've now prevented you from having cancer. You could have polyps there, and you can get testing done, and we may not know that polyp is there. So then, therefore, it's still growing in there. So you do want to get the colonoscopy if you can.
I thought the age has reduced from 50 to 45, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it depends. If a person has a family history of having colon cancer, if a person has any type of symptoms and that kind of stuff, we go in. I can go in as early as 35 or 40. If a person has inflammatory bowel disease, right, that's another type of an issue that you're having, we may go in. If a person has a change in bowels, I may go in, right? So we're going to look, depending on the person. But I'm just talking to you guys as a whole, and I give my disclaimer, and I'll say to you that anything I say, I said it, but I think you need to go to your doctor because you're the person who they're dealing with, right? You're the person, right? And talk to your doctor about it. And that's the whole point of this. If you are at the age of 50, you never had a colonoscopy, go get one. Go get one. And there's a lot of places that will do them sometimes for free. If you call the hospitals on the phone and you call different places, look for those and say, I need this, I don't have insurance or whatever it happens to be, how can I do that? And there are going to be a lot of places who will say, well, we can actually bring you in and we could put you on what we call our charity care, and then we can actually get you that for a sliding fee type of a thing. Talk to your doctors about that. Let's go to the next slide. So risk factors, a high diet and high fat, red or processed meat, age over 45, alcohol use. You see how they say the same stuff keeps coming up? It's the same stuff, right? Polyps are there, obesity is there, family history of colorectal cancer. I talked about the inflammatory bowel disease, that's the Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis type of thing. Insufficient fiber, getting fiber is good, and voila, smoking. So it's the same stuff, right, for all of these different diseases. Let's go to the next slide. So we have different symptoms you can have: change in the size and the shape of the stool, blood in the stool, a mass or a lump in the abdomen, some cramping, nausea, vomiting, weight loss, fatigue. If you have any type of symptoms, go talk to your doctor. That's what's going to be the thing. 50 years or older, you're going to get the colon screening. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I can diagnose it. I take a biopsy. We get a CAT scan, MRI, chest X-rays, blah, 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 blah. And then we have some specific blood tests that we can actually take, like the prostate-specific antigen. There are colon cancer antigens also that we could potentially take. If you're positive for that, that's one of the ways we can actually follow your cancer. We don't diagnose the cancer that way, but I could follow your cancer that way. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so same thing as before with all of the surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy. Next slide. So I want everybody to remember this. This is the whole point. We talked about a lot of different diseases, but I want you to remember the whole idea of SPADE, right? Smoking, there's prevention, alcohol, diet, and exercise. That's what it really comes down to. I don't care what diseases we talk about, and I could have given you 12 other diseases, and we would have still been on that same SPADE. So here we're calling a spade a spade. You're going to have to come out of where you are about how this is the way we've always done it. I've always eaten this way. This is what I like. You got to kind of come away from that and always remember the strength of a nation is seen in and measured by the strength of its men. Strong, healthy men make strong, healthy families. Strong families make strong communities. Strong communities make strong cities and counties. Strong cities and counties make strong states, and strong states make a strong nation. That is the whole point of this. And we as men are responsible for our family. Right? There are 3 institutions that we have to be responsible for. The first institution is our family. The second institution is the education of our children. And the third institution is our churches. If we can get that together, we would do very well. Those are the 3 institutions that we have to basically control and do a good job with. Our families, the education of our children, and our churches. Because that's where a lot of this stuff is breaking down. So it doesn't make a difference who is in office. It makes no difference at all because I control my family. I control the education of my children, and then I control what's going on with my church. Does that make sense? We have to be the strong men. It starts with us. It starts with us because we are the what? We are the leaders of our family, right? So all that with the men, and everybody got to go to the church, and I'm going to take care of the church, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. If you're not taking care of your family, you're negligent in your job duties. That's your first ministry, take care of your family. And just like we say on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first, and then take care of everybody else. Take care of your health. Take care of your health, and then you can actually help take care of everybody else because you're around to do that. Right? You're no good to your family if you're 6 feet under. You're no good to your family if you're debilitated ill. Right? And we could have taken care of this and prevented a lot of this stuff much earlier on rather than waiting because you said, I don't want nobody to give me a rectal exam. Okay? Anybody have any other questions? Yes, sir.
My question is this. Is there a possibility of you not having prostate cancer if you are 80 or above 80? Because my father died at the age of 105, and he did not have any prostate problem till he died.
Okay. So I will say this to you. I'm going to say this to you. The studies that I'm talking about, are actually post-mortem studies. What I mean by that is that they checked at the men's prostates after they died. And basically, if I have a 105-year-old man, if I check his prostate after he's died, the most likely he had prostate cancer. It didn't affect his life. He was fine. We're not going to treat it. That was the whole point. We're not going to do that at all. But the likelihood is that he has prostate cancer. And he had it for a while. But it didn't affect his life. That's why we don't do anything about that. Just because a person is 90 years old and they have some prostate cancer does not mean that it's going to ruin their lives. Not at all. We just don't do nothing about it. Live your life and enjoy yourself. Right? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And he lived to 105. He was doing something right. Right? So that's not a problem at all. But those are post-mortem studies that we actually look at that. That's how we could tell that. And then we stopped doing it. We stopped trying to now look for that in a 90-year-old man. That makes no sense. Yes, sir.
Say someone has prostate cancer or they just have an enlarged prostate, which is benign. What is the difference between the two?
One is cancer. One is abnormal cells that are growing that could potentially spread outside of the prostate. The other one is just a big prostate. And the other one is going to bother you because it's going to be symptomatic, but it's not going to kill you.
And when it's enlarged and it's benign, could that also have a negative effect as far as one's way of living, as in to affect?
It'll affect your lifestyle in the symptoms. For example, if you have a large prostate, you may be getting up in the middle of the night 3 or 4 times a night to go to the bathroom. If you have a large prostate, you may have the urgency that I have to go to the bathroom, meaning that you're fine, and then you say, I gotta go to the bathroom, and I gotta go to the bathroom right now, and then you run into the bathroom. You may have a person who has a large prostate who's leaking, right? So it affects you from a symptomatic perspective, but it's not cancer, right? So that is sometimes much more bothersome to the man than if they had cancer, because that is really bothering them every day in their lives, right? So, but one is, a large prostate is not going to kill you. It's just a large prostate. All right? Any other questions? Speak now, if forever hold your peace. All right then. Well, listen, guys, it was wonderful being here. Remember the things that we said. If somebody does have any questions or something like that, I feel like I'm a part of the church, let the pastor know so that he can always give me a call. I don't have any problem trying to give you advice as to where you can go. I do know certain physicians who I think are very good when it comes to certain diseases, and I can kind of say, well, you may want to call this doctor or call that doctor or go to this particular hospital. Also, it's very important that where you live, I try to get people to kind of go places that their family can support them, right? There may be a great hospital that's, in Washington, D.C., but if you can't get there, then what's the point? Right? And if your family can't get there to see you, what's the point, right? So then we have to get you something that's a little closer, and we can work on that.
Dr. Bright, do you have where you practice your office?
Okay, so my office is at Roberta's house. I'm the vice president of Roberta's house, so I do administrative work in running the company, right? We are a grief and loss organization dealing with a lot of mental health and trauma and things like that. So I don't see patients here. I haven't seen a patient in eons. It feels like, probably almost like 30 years that I've had a practice where I was actually seeing patients. So I was a physician at the age of 25. I probably saw patients up until the age of, really saw patients up until the age of probably about 35 for about 10 to 15 years of seeing patients. Then after that, I was strictly administrative. For the past 20 years, I was at ran the Department of Health and the Department of Social Services and the Department of Housing for Baltimore County. And then I retired from that, and now I'm at Roberta's house, which is a not-for-profit in the community. I'm trying to do some work because I believe that the African American community is really suffering. And I think it is suffering. One of the reasons why I think it's suffering is because of the mental illness that we're having and the trauma that we're having in that community. And until somebody addresses those issues, then it's never going to get better. And so I felt that going to something like that, I was going to really be able to help the community, help the people, because that's an issue. Our families are basically destroyed. Politically, I will say to you that I think that was intentional. But I feel that what we've done is that we are not taking care of our families, we're not taking care of the education of our children, and we aren't taking care of our churches. And that's the problem. Those are the three, and that's why I talk about those three things. It's so very, very important. If you want to destroy the family, all you have to do is feminize and weaken the man. And how do you do that? By killing the boy. Right? If I hurt the boy, he'll never become the man to lead the family. Right? So that's the issue that we're having. We've taken the men out. Systematically, we've taken the men out of the families. And then the boys don't have anybody to actually train and raise them. So they're out of control. So I've now lost the family. When I lose the men, I lose the family, there goes the nation. We're a very weak nation because of that. And until we take charge of the families to raise those boys and take charge of their education and take charge of our churches, we will never be able to get a strong nation. And everybody's feeling that because they did it to the people of color, and now they're feeling it now seep into other background, other ethnic people. It's important. The Lord made us a certain way, right? Men are men, and women are women. That's the way the Lord made us, right? And we have to be in that role to be able to continue to make the family structure work very well.
Dr. Branch, last question. Which one is the most affects men's libido? Is it the prostate, enlarged prostate, or diabetic? Which one is the most common one that affects men's libido?
I'm going to tell you the truth, it's hard to answer that question because it depends on how the diabetes are affecting the man. So diabetes will affect the nerves that are going to the penis and the blood flow to the penis. So therefore, that will, after a while, it will actually affect a man's libido and his erections. A person who has prostate cancer may have great erections, and they may not be a problem at all. But after a while, once it now spreads to other parts of the body, that man is extraordinarily sick. So what happens is it kind of depends on what you're actually kind of talking about and where you are in the disease process. If you got both, you're in trouble, right? But that's just the way it is, right? So that's the issue. That's why it's so important for the young men to understand you got to stop some of this stuff. The reason why is I know that's what you do, but you still want to be sexually active when you're 60. You still want to be sexually active when you're 70. But if you're not doing what you're supposed to do when you're 30 and 40, you decrease your the likelihood that you'll be able to get the erections when you're older, right? That's why it's so important to deal with that stuff at an earlier age. Because when we're young, we do a whole lot of stuff and we don't think about it. But I'm telling you, when you get to that 60 and that 65 and that 70 years old, in your mind, you're still knocking down walls. But in fact, that's not what you're doing. Right? And that's because you've put a toll on your life, right? And you weren't doing what you were supposed to do earlier on. But they both affect it. But I can't tell you one affects it more than the other.
I was going to ask your opinion. I was trying to recollect the name. I cannot remember. It starts with A, one of those options to treat enlarged prostate. It starts with, I don't know if it's Azaria or something like that, because they use a steam to kill the cell instead of you going under the knife or whatever, but yet you still have your libido without any. I want to ask you your opinion, what you think about it, how long would that stay?
I'm going to tell you now that, because one of the things I could always safely say, when I don't know, I don't know. So I want to tell you, I don't know.
Okay.
And the reason why is because some of those things are brand new types of innovative type of things that I'm not a part of that. But what I can tell you is that going to a urologist and going to your primary care doctor who's actually seeing patients, they can actually help you with that.
They told me that.
Okay?
You don't have to go under the knife, but they go through your penis and they hit you hard. It's a steam, so some kind of steam, and then kills the cells, those enlarged cells, so it doesn't grow.
Okay.
But then it depends on you, your build-up, how quick your system can grow back. But nobody tells how long that will last you. You don't have to go, you still have your libido, whatever you want to have. You don't have to cut anything.
Well, that sounds good.
Yes.
That sounds good. I guess we'll speak to the doctor who does that.
I'll try to get the name.
Yeah.
I think I.
All right then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Branch. Since